Hi everybody, welcome back at M2 Meets Inside EUSOBI. Today I got the pleasure again to talk to Dr. Ritse Mann from Nijmegen, Netherlands. Among many other responsibilities and tasks in EUSOBI, he's the chairperson of the scientific committee. And today we're gonna chat a little bit more in detail about his committee, the people who are engaging there, their work, their project, and why it is fun to work there, and it may be even worthwhile to consider that you considering to join the committee. Thanks again, Richard, for taking your time. In a nutshell, why is it cool to be involved in your committee?
I actually entered EUSOBI as a scientist rather than as a radiologist. At that point, I hadn't studied a single letter of radiology, and I really thought that it was great to bring science across. I still think it's great to bring science across, and somehow that is the focus of the scientific committee. Basically, what we try to do is to bring science together, bring science to a platform, and bring with that the field step by step further, right? There's never ever the idea to dismiss people, disrespect people. It's the idea to bring our field together further so that we eventually improve the lives of the women that we sort of serve. Incidentally, even men, I would say. All in, what we do is we figure out what has been done in science. We figure out what new opportunities are there and where we need to focus. We do that by bringing knowledge from different places together, right? This also means that the members of the scientific committee are usually people who frequent the conferences around the world. They just collect information there, collect names, collect visionary people that have the capacity of sort of explaining why there is more out there than what we do on an everyday routine basis. It doesn't mean that the routine basis is not good, but we are all the time convinced that we can do a bit better. So that's sort of what's for me behind the scientific committee. Then obviously there are the classic tasks that you would do in a scientific committee, right? So one of the things we do is evaluate the abstracts that get submitted to our annual scientific meeting. And I really think that is a very important part. It's also a part where I'm quite proud of due to the simple fact that when I entered EUSOBI, there were 3 abstracts submitted.
Sorry for interrupting you. 3 abstracts. This is amazing. Well, okay.
That's where EUSOBI came from, right? At that point, it was actually still attached to the ECR. I'm not sure if you have ever been there at that point in time, but that was just half a day before the main ECR meeting. And it didn't have the atmosphere that is currently associated to what we do at EUSOBI, right? Then it was somewhat dusty and somewhat silent, and there didn't happen too much. I think a lot changed when EUSOBI as a conference became independent, right? It's 2012, and we had the first version in Barcelona. And from there, we got some abstracts, and I think we only established the abstract submission system as we currently have it in 2016, right? And the number of abstracts that we get has every year increased, and we get more people on the podium. We get more applications for junior investigators. We get more positions for people that qualify, for example, for the Carla Boetes Award. There's also a thing that is sort of dear to me. Carla Boetes was my own mentor, and that is really an award that is aimed at honoring young people in the field who have made a strong scientific contribution to our field. And I think that fits Carla very nicely.
And those of you who are not that much into history of EUSOBI, Carla Boetes has been one of the pioneers, not only of the Dutch breast imaging, but also of the EUSOBI, who shaped basically the first 1.5 decades, right, of EUSOBI, and was your scientific and clinical mentor in breast imaging, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And this very award is named after Carla. Okay, the first edition was in I think it was you, right, who received it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then she had just passed away, right? So there was sort of an honorary part to it for her as well. Anyway, that is one of the things I think is really vital, and where I really think that it's also important to strengthen younger investigators in our field, bring them to a platform where they can actually show how they are going to contribute further also in the field of breast imaging. And then we have obviously all the white papers that we have been written. Basically, that started out with papers on biopsy and eventually breast MR. I think that was also for me personally sort of my career break, the breast MR guidelines we wrote from within the EUSOBI. At that point, not officially from the scientific committee because it didn't exist at that point in time. But these kind of papers have been embraced by the members of the scientific committee. And honestly, many of the members of the scientific committee are also members of the executive board. So this is a very strong carried part of EUSOBI, where we really do what I was just talking about, right? We try to bring the science to the working floor and try to convert the sort of dry tables and texts that are in the classic scientific papers into something that is useful.
But let's talk about this tremendous work you've been doing together with your team, obviously, these white papers. So the latest and arguably most successful was the recommendation screening women with dense breast, which received many attention and awards, and it was one of the most important achievements. There's a separate series covering this topic, so let's talk about the others one, because these are also very important. I remember your guidelines you authored, was it in 2008, about I think the first really more professional guidelines how to do, or recommendations how to do breast MR. Then the second, I remember, please correct me, you know them way better than I am, the recommendation for women information, very, very important white paper. Then the ultrasound white paper, etc., etc. So maybe
the recommendations for women's information was a series, right? I mean, we have the recommendations for women's information on breast MR, but we also have them on ultrasound, we have them on biopsy.
Exactly.
And they were really brought as a means to inform, well, on one hand, patients, but on the other hand, also our referring physicians. And I really think that is a very important group that we sometimes sort of fail to really address, right? We talk amongst ourselves, and then we try to reach out to the women on the street, which is sort of tricky because we are very often not the doctors that they see. So those papers bring information in such a way that's understandable by both the patients and the referrers, and as such sort of explains in lay terms, but not entirely lay, what we can offer as radiologists and what the consequences are of what we do. And I really think those are important. They are not guidelines per se, right? They are basically built on the guidelines that are already existing. And as you said, the MR paper is already from 2008, but even before EUSOBI published, for example, a guideline paper on biopsies. I think Matthew Wallace did that.
Yeah, you're right. It was a 2007 guideline from the EUSOBI for diagnostic interventional breast procedures. I had to look it up. By the way, we will put all the papers and the link also in the bio of this interview, so you guys at home can go through, because this is a tremendous list reflecting the work what this committee has been done during the last 15 years, 1.5 decades. Let's talk a little bit about the projects who are ongoing, because obviously science never stops, right? There's never an end like in a book. It's all. So any projects you would like to chat about now, which are not too secret to be open for the public?
There are things that need to be done, right? And we all know that. One of the trouble is always finding the time. So honestly, if there are people around that want to help, they're always welcome, really. But it demands some dedication to do something like this. You need to delve through tons and tons of papers and figure out what's really true and what's not, and weigh it and discuss it with other people to make sure that it is a recommendation that everyone can support. I think that's a very important part of writing these kind of papers. It's very often balancing science with real or clinical knowledge and possibilities of people. Things that we need to do and that we will do in the near future are at least rewriting the MRI guideline. Honestly, from 2008, we have some work to do there. We will also try to come up with a research agenda more broad to say, okay, these are the focus areas we really need to focus in. And this is what we, as EUSOBI, deem important. Then we have been discussing papers on, for example, risk estimation, figuring out who to classify in which risk category so that we can actually bring women to more personalized screening programs. These are not easy tasks to tackle, so it might take a while before we get these papers out. More in the short term, we try to write a staging paper on, or a paper on recommendations on breast cancer staging that is almost finished in its final version. So that should come out relatively soon. And I think there will be an update on the staging of axillary lymph nodes metastasis in patients after COVID vaccination somewhere in the next weeks. That's due to the fact that it's such a pertinent issue at this point in time. It's relatively quick, but it also is relatively important now. Many things, as you hear, and there are more.
Sure, just a sneak preview what's in the pipeline, but these are obviously broad topics, and not only that, they are important. That's a matter of fact, but they need a powerful society collecting leading individuals who are collaborating as a team to get the message across. And I think that's the beauty about the scientific committee, that you have people who are extremely knowledgeable, but who also share their knowledge and getting into their in a white paper, and that's nicely shown in the recent EUSOBI paper on breast screening, right? Which
what I think is also nice is that EUSOBI has evolved from sort of an hidden away society to one of the leading voices in our community. And as such, what we currently also do, for example, is reviewing and underpinning, or how do you call that, supporting guidelines that are written by other societies.
Oh, do you do? Oh,
so
okay.
It is possible, if you write on behalf of Society X and guideline, to send it to EUSOBI to have it endorsed. But that will obviously go through the internal peer review process within the scientific committee once again, right? And I really think that's also essential, that we in that way actually bring knowledge together and also prevent getting 500,000 guidelines on the same topic that all say a little bit different things. It's nicer to have one voice. It's only possible because there are so many people willing to actually spend their time in these kind of projects.
How many people are currently on the board? How did it evolve? Like you mentioned that in the beginning there was no official committee, because then we had 3 abstracts. So just tell me about the people in your team.
It is really sort of evolving, right? The group expanded, people became more active, and well, you know that last year we had sort of a new application round where we got quite a few applications for the scientific committee and 4 new members. You are one of them, so yeah, that's sort of straightforward. I think we have excellent scientists from really across Europe, all different countries, all different backgrounds, but all people who are really scientifically driven, have either a strong background in AI or a strong background in MRI or a strong background actually in DBT research. And I think also that kind of variability within the scientific committee makes it a strong, coherent group. There is actually currently even a physicist on board.
Which is extremely important because physics, that's a major part of our job as radiologists, right? It's not push button. Sometimes we need people in the like, Johannes, right?
Yeah, Well, it does not help to have a couple of people around that actually know the physics. But I guess this is the only committee where we really have non-radiologists in active positions.
Let the people know who are now maybe younger radiologists, but also academic radiologists, how to get engaged, involved in the committee, how to get part of it. Maybe some people think after this videocast, hey, that's cool, but I got no idea whether I'm exactly the right person. So how to reach out, how to engage, how to support, yeah, this kind of thing.
I think there are two things that you can do. I mean, we will repeat the application round in a year, right? So then you can just apply for a position in the scientific committee, where you will have to compete based upon your scientific curriculum, more or less. That is one thing that you can do if you are sort of an established researcher and have a sort of a background in this field. But obviously, if you are young and you just hear this and you would like to do something rather than show your curriculum, I think it would actually be nice if you approach EUSOBI and say, I would like to work on this specific topic in cooperation with the people from the scientific committee to generate a guideline in that direction. As I said, there's many things out there that we are currently working on. So maybe you can just help in what's already going on. Or if there is no one actually already doing that and we think it's a good idea, we might help you to actually do it. I think that are the two flavors out of it.
And that's basically comes back to the same story. It's a teamwork thing, right? You're welcome anywhere to support. There are roles for anybody. Just here, engage. We will leave in the bio of this video call the links and the emails where to connect with the teams. Wonderful. As I said, Ritse, there could be a lot more to talk, but I think we covered the main thing. We talked a little bit about the history of the board, how it evolved, the past projects, tons of white papers, all of them gonna be in the bio of this interview, future projects. I think most important is this team spirit, right? Because without the team people, forget it, right? It wouldn't work.
A lot of work, and it's only possible with a lot of people and a lot of different knowledges.
Exactly, and that's the beauty about the scientific community, getting them all together, no matter whether they're physicists, MR people, SEM people, all together, supporting the breast imaging involvement and to get it on the best possible level. Ritse, the final word of these videocasts usually belongs obviously not to me. Maybe 2 or 3 final sentences, just as a final concluding message before we close this videocast.
If you want to work with us, you're welcome. It's just as simple as that. There's a lot to be done. We take our work serious. It means that it needs to be scientifically sound, it needs to be workable, it needs to be carried by the society. So in that sense, please join.
Thank you, Ritse, very much for taking your time again and for sharing this vision of the board which you're leading. And I, for my part, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to join it. And I can only repeat what you said. It's a great feeling. It's super professional. Yeah, and it's fun to get breast imaging on the even higher level. Thanks very much, Ritse, for taking again the time today. And you guys for watching. If you've got any questions, leave them in the bio and we will answer them. Have a good one. Stay tuned to our channels. Goodbye.